The final chapter of MHA reveals a massive 8-year time skip, Deku's new career, and all our favorite hero students as adults. We also learned the new top 5 strongest pro heroes of this new generation, what happens to everyone in the end, and so much more, so let's get into it. You guys know the usual, like and subscribe to support the channel. Now let's go. In the last chapter, we got the resolution to that mysterious plot point that was introduced in chapter 425. That mysterious character that looked like he might be a villain was revealed to have a very tragic backstory, but he ended up finding a happy ending in chapter 429. When he was first introduced, I thought he might have been a Nomu or some sort of major villain who had escaped government custody, but in reality he was just a scared and traumatized kid. He manifested a freak variant quirk that was unrelated to anyone in his family, kinda like Eri. Because his quirk was so dangerous, his family got scared of him and locked him away inside the basement. They even tied him up and sewed his mouth shut so he couldn't even scream, and then they left him like that for years. When the villain war started, his family fled the house, but still left him tied up in the basement. Thankfully, before he could starve to death, he was set free when an explosion took out a portion of the house, which allowed him to escape the basement. When he got out into the outside world after all those years, he was expecting to find absolute chaos, hatred, and destruction, but instead he saw people smiling and helping each other to rebuild Japan after the war. This made the boy resentful, because he didn't understand why he was the only one who had to suffer. He started to activate his quirk, and it looked like he was about to lose control, much like little Tenko Shimura back when his quirk first manifested. But then, the situation was thankfully diffused when that same old lady who didn't help little Tenko ended up reaching out to this boy and helping him. That lady had always regretted not doing anything to help Tenko because she believed that some heroes would surely come and help him so she didn't have to do it herself. She didn't actually know that this same boy eventually became Tomura Shigaraki, but even without knowing it, she was still losing sleep over her failure to act that day. And then, after seeing Deku demonstrating the need for everyone to support each other and that sitting back and doing nothing isn't an option, the lady decided that this time she would act. She grabbed the boy's hand and said, "You'll be just fine because Granny is here to help," and this calmed the boy down. He deactivated his quirk and the tension was resolved. I'll be honest, when Horikoshi decided to add a completely new potential villain only a few chapters before the manga was supposed to end, I was very skeptical about what he was actually going to do with this villain, and I was afraid that the entire plot point would end up being very rushed and unsatisfying. But I have to say that Hori has impressed me here, because not only did he resolve the plot point in a way that redeems the old lady who didn't help Tenko, but what happened here also clearly demonstrated just how much of a positive impact all of Deku's sacrificing had on the wider public. And this also demonstrated that one of the main problems of the previous Hero Society is now finally being resolved. In the past, pro heroes became this all-encompassing brand that everyone just relied on to do everything. Just like that old lady who didn't help Tenko, many people simply let the heroes take care of all the problems, and they refused to accept any real responsibility for themselves and their own actions. One of these victims was of course Tenko, who then became an arch-villain that almost destroyed all of Japan. But now, finally, after all the war and destruction, even regular people have learned that they need to do their part to help, and society is changing for the better. The other main part of the previous chapter was the emotional conversation between Deku and Ochako. That conversation was actually really good, because we saw Deku talking about all the times that Ochako had been there for him when he needed her, from all the way back at the entrance exam, to helping him control Black Whip, to standing up for him when people didn't want to accept him back into the UA, and so on. Because of all these times that Ochako had been there for him, Deku says to her, "You're my hero," which was a freaking powerful moment, we all gotta admit. Deku then said that because she has always been there for him in his times of need, he wants to be there for her now that she clearly is in need of help dealing with the death of Toga and everything else that happened. The scene ended with Deku and Ochako holding hands, and with their friends from 2A arriving on the scene because they were also worried about Ochako and they wanted to be there for her. Other stuff happened too, but check out my previous video if you want to see all the discussion of all the small details. This chapter itself ended on a different day, with Deku and Ochako patrolling the streets with Ingenyu. Deku and Ochako are smiling, and from the position of their arms, they look like they might be holding hands, which obviously caused pandemonium within the shipping fandoms because even in the second to last chapter, Horikoshi didn't confirm any ships. But that's all going to change in the last chapter, right? I mean, we're getting an 8-year time skip, so we're going to see our favorite characters as adults, and we're going to see who ends up with whom, right? Well, let's talk about it. The narration for the final chapter is from Deku's perspective, and it mirrors the narration from the very first chapter when Deku says that people were not born equal. In the first chapter, this was referring to the fact that most people were born with a quirk and Deku was not, and that is the hard truth he learned at age 4 when his quirk failed to manifest. He says that individually we all look different, and yet we're able to empathize with others. Our differences, both physical and mental, allow us to run towards other people in search of common ground. That is something he learned at age 17, and that is the real truth about society. We see that Deku is writing these words into a notebook that could be a rough draft of a manga he is writing, implying that maybe the whole MHA manga was actually written by Deku. But the even more interesting bit is where Deku is writing these words. He is writing them inside a UA staff room, and he is wearing a suit. That's right, adult Deku became a UA teacher, as so many of us predicted. Honestly, Deku becoming a UA teacher, especially after becoming quirkless again, meaning that he can't be an effective pro hero, makes perfect sense. We see that little Koda is a teenager now and a UA student, and he calls out to Deku, first calling him Big Bro Midoriya, then correcting himself and saying Deku-sensei. He asks where Deku wants them for their practical skills practice, and Deku answers that they're meeting at the bus stop and then going to the USJ. This really brings the story full circle, and most of this chapter takes place after an 8-year time skip, so when Deku and the rest of Class A are about 25 years old. But we do get a sort of a flashback of how we got here and what happened in the meantime in the form of a large double-page collage of panels. We see Deku going home to his smiling mother. We see All Might and Recovery Girl taking care of elderly Gran Torino. We see the students of Class A engaging in their normal school activities. We see that Miruko is still working as a hero and she is upgrading her prosthetic limbs with the latest technology. Good to know that my personal waifu is still going strong after everything she's been through. She really is the most badass character in the entire series. I don't want to hear any arguments on that front. We also see that Mount Lady and Kamui Woods are still working hard as heroes, and we see them seemingly rescuing a helicopter from an accident. We also see Mezzo Shoji reaching out to other heteromorphs and working to make their lives better and to end discrimination against them. We see little Koda and Eri holding hands while Mandalay gives a thumbs up. We see Aizawa and Mike praying at a grave that likely belongs to Oboro Shirakumo, but they might also be paying their respects to Midnight at the same time. Then we see Endeavor and his sidekicks. He is still in the wheelchair being pushed by his wife, and I think Burnin is there with a few other sidekicks. I was wondering if the guy at the front with the white hair is actually Toya because he seems to be missing like a leg and an arm, I think. But the drawing is so small that I just don't know. It could be one of Endeavor's like 30 sidekicks. What do you guys think? Who is this guy at the front? Could Toya have somehow miraculously survived in the end? There is also a scene that appears to show Deku and a few more Class A members meeting a girl with long blonde hair, which I'm gonna assume is Melissa Shield. We see that a book called The League of Villains is being sold at stores, so Spinner did deliver on his plans. We see more Class A shenanigans happening. We see Deku and Ochako going on what looks like a date in the winter, and we see the Class A graduation ceremony. Ida seems to be giving a speech as the class rep when suddenly he is interrupted by Bakugo's explosions and all hell breaks loose, similarly to Midio's speech from his graduation. And I think that's Nato Monoma also there with Bakugo, so clearly Nato is still keeping busy, which is good to see. Back to the time skip 8 years later, and we see a new middle school class preparing to apply for high school. The teacher asks them to submit their future career forms, and we see that there are some students who want to go to UA, but there are also many other students who have other interesting plans. One student says that support items are extremely trendy these days, probably because technology keeps advancing rapidly, meaning that support items are just getting better and better. This student wants to work for a support item designing company that is run by the genius inventor Mei Hatsume, and at that point we get a glimpse of adult Mei working hard. And you know what? I want to work there too. No, I don't care that I don't know anything about mechanics. No, I don't care that the chapter implies that Mei is sweaty and needs a bath. I'm still locked in. Don't judge me. Anyway, we see another student who says she wants to become a doctor like Ryu Yoshida, who is that doctor guy who looks like Yoshi. A furry student wants to join the programming company run by Gentle and La Brava, because again, technology is advancing rapidly, so this is a huge and highly successful industry. And then there's a student called Dai who also wants to be a hero, but he's teased by another student because he has a weak quirk. We've actually seen this kid when he was younger. He was just like a random side character looking up at the All Might statue with admiration, and now that he's older, he wants to become a hero. However, his quirk only allows him to generate plates from his hair and then throw them at people. The other student who wants to become a hero tells Dai that his dream will never come true with such a weak quirk because there are less and less villains now, so that means that there isn't much need for heroes. There still are heroes, but now there isn't as much work for them and there doesn't need to be as many of them, so only the very strongest and best are able to become pro heroes. We see Dai walking in the street and he thinks about how people have changed in these past 8 years. Back when he was a kid, everyone fantasized about being a pro hero and they all wanted to be like All Might, Endeavor, and Best Jeanist, or even like the new gen heroes Deku, Dynamite, and Shoto. But now that there's less need for heroes, and now that technology and support items are becoming more and more powerful and more trendy, most people don't want to be heroes. They want to be inventors or programmers or work in some other high-paying tech job. However, Dai still feels like he hasn't grown out of his hero phase, and he still walks to that square in Kamino to look up at the iconic statue of All Might. The chapter then shifts away from Dai's perspective to show us what the other former hero students are up to now, and honestly there's a lot of cool stuff happening in this section of the chapter, so let's break it all down. Mezzo Shoji aka Tentacle has become a successful pro hero. He is absolutely jacked and he has sick long hair. He is also spearheading efforts to resolve prejudice-based incidents in a peaceful way in smaller towns and cities, where this type of discrimination against heteromorphs still happens. This has all been well established in previous chapters of the manga, so this all makes a lot of sense, and it's kind of the perfect career path for Shoji to take. He even received a Peace Prize for his efforts, and he dedicates that prize to all the heteromorphs who stood up for their rights 8 years ago. So Shoji took that event where All For One riled up the heteromorphs to attack the Hero Society and turned it into a positive moment that contributed to the fight for justice. Which, I have to say, politically is a brilliant way to handle things and bring everyone together. We see that Koda and Kojiro Bondo from Class B are also there supporting Shoji as fellow heteromorphs. We also see that the Class A students are still hanging out together and doing team-ups. Ingenium, Ida, Tsuyu, Momo, and Ochako are working together to visit grade schools across the country and to inspire students and set them on the right path. Since there is much less villain activity now, pro heroes have the extra time to do things that are not directly related to fighting crime. On top of that, Ochako is spearheading a special quirk counseling project, and this is considered to be one of the most important initiatives for the current Hero Society. We don't get a lot of details, but we can assume that this counseling project was created to help students like Toga who struggle with the nature of their quirk and how it affects other people around them, and also how it affects society as a whole. Ochako's goal is to prevent children like Toga from slipping through the cracks and ending up on the wrong path, which always leads to suffering. This again makes perfect sense because we know how greatly affected Ochako was by Toga's tragic fate. So, Ochako deciding herself to help prevent such tragedies in the future is a great call by Horikoshi. We then get a brief glimpse of a new generation of middle school students, including Eri, who is now part of the music club, like her idol Jiro. One of the other girls there kind of looks like Tsuyu, so I'm not sure if that's supposed to be Tsuyu's little sister, but if it is, she's definitely changed a lot in these 8 years because she used to look very differently. The pace of the chapter is then interrupted by Aizawa asking Deku if he's seen how his childhood friend has been acting. Apparently, Bakugo will likely drop in the hero leaderboard again after freaking out and yelling at a reporter for filming him. Deku tells Aizawa that at least he tried his best to change Bakugo, and Aizawa proceeds to say that after this latest incident, Todoroki is sure to shoot ahead of Bakugo in the ranking. I'm sure this isn't the first controversy that Bakugo has had, so I wouldn't be surprised if he does end up getting penalized. We know that the hero rankings are no longer just about strength and power, they now include non-heroes, and I think being a good citizen is a huge part of it now. So yeah, Bakugo may have a tough time staying in the top. As for Shoto, he's been working very hard and solving incidents left and right. He's still a bit awkward when it comes to handling media attention, but he treats his fans really well, and people don't even refer to him as Endeavor's son anymore. Shoto has earned the respect of the public on his own, and now they see him as his own individual and a great hero, not just the former strongest hero's son. Deku believes that Shoto is likely going to surpass Mount Lady at Kamui Woods in the ranking soon, and is going to be competing for the #1 spot with the current strongest pro hero, Mirio Togata. Apparently Monoma and Honenuki are also doing really well in the rankings, so they're presumably in the top 10 or 20. I'm actually surprised to find Monoma is doing so well, but good for him. I feel like I always liked Monoma more than most people, so I'm glad he's grown into his own, and even though he's obnoxious, he seems to be a really good hero. With all this talk about pro hero rankings, Aizawa wonders if Deku feels lonely, because while his friends and former classmates are off being heroes, He is now quirkless and working as a teacher. He can't join his friends in their hero activities, even though he always wanted to become a hero. Deku answers that he knew that even if he went back to being quirkless, he would still be able to use his experience to encourage other people. So he's glad that he can teach the next generation of hero students at the UA, and he thinks that's pretty cool in its own way. Then he asks Aizawa, "Do you think I'm cool, sensei?" But Aizawa responds that Deku needs to be stricter with his students. Deku can't just be BFFs with all his students because in today's hero society, many kids think that just getting into UA is enough to make great heroes in the future, but that can lead to them becoming arrogant and entitled. Since becoming a hero is getting harder now, Deku has to make sure that he's being strict and stern as a teacher. However, Deku retorts by saying that Aizawa himself was pretty kind to his own students. We then go back to Deku's narration. As he is walking down the street in his teacher suit, he thinks about his friends and how after they all became adults, it's been harder to line up their days off and meet up to just hang out. But Deku gets to see his friends everywhere he looks, from posters of Tokoyami to news reports about Red Riot, a hero who is really popular with manly men because he's such an epic Chad and he inspires others to be more manly like him. Seeing the hero work that his former classmates are doing makes Deku happy, and when he feels nostalgic about his school days, he always goes to the square in Kamino to look at that statue of All Might. While Deku is walking, he sees two kids playing and chasing each other, and as they run, Deku notices that one of them is about to fall. Without thinking, Deku dives forward to catch one of the kids, and he does manage to do so. The kid thanks him and walks away, but Deku notices that another boy had also tried to jump to catch the kid, only he failed and fell to the ground. The boy in question is Dai, who was also there looking at the statue, and as soon as he sees Deku, he recognizes him and starts fanboying over him. He can't believe that Deku is a real guy and that he's actually there. And Deku just smiles and they get to talking. Dai tells Deku that he will be taking the hero school entrance exams, but he's worried that he won't get in because his quirk is very weak compared to the quirks of his classmates. Because of his insecurities regarding his quirk, Dai decided to come to the All Might statue so that he can ask it if he can become a hero too, just like All Might and Deku. Deku thinks back to his own childhood and how insecure he was because he didn't possess any quirk at all, and how he asked All Might if he could become a hero one day like him. Deku immediately starts giving pointers to Dai about how to use his quirk in a way that will allow him to become a hero. For example, if his quirk consists of throwing plates that come from his hair, he can take inspiration from Mineta. He can throw many of them at once to enhance the strength of his attacks, he can change their sizes so that can also be used to his advantage, and so on. Dai is almost like confused because unlike most people, Deku is actually encouraging him and he's getting really into it. For Deku's part, he believes that his dream has already come true, and now it's his turn to give dreams to other people. So he tells Dai that yes, he can be a hero. After all, he just tried reaching out to that kid who was falling. He did it without thinking, without worrying about hurting himself, and he also fell while diving to help the kid. So that means that he has the hero mindset, and that is why Deku tells him, "You can be a hero." He encourages Dai to do his best, which clearly means the world to the little guy. Deku admits to himself that he does get a bit lonely at times. He is a UA teacher while all his friends are out being heroes, but if he can encourage other people, then that's enough for him. Deku finishes his narration with, "And that's the story of how we all became the greatest heroes." The chapter then seems to end right there. In fact, we literally see the word end. But then All Might grabs the letters and smashes them in his hand. All Might's eyes are back to being white now, they are no longer black and sunken. He says, "What took you so long, young Midoriya?" And Deku is confused. He says he could have gone to the airport to pick All Might up if he had known sooner, but All Might says that he wanted to give Deku a surprise gift. Apparently, All Might was visiting the USA and he was working with Melissa Shield on a piece of brand new cutting-edge technology. Using the data collected during his fight with All For One 8 years ago, Melissa and May were able to work together to use rapidly evolving cutting-edge technology to create another combat suit like the one that All Might used against All For One when All Might himself was already quirkless. To Deku's great surprise, All Might says that he wants to get data from Deku as a former user of multiple quirks, and so he is gifting this new high-tech battle suit to none other than Midoriya Shonen. Just like with All Might's old suit, this one comes in the shape of a briefcase, and Deku says that it just looks so expensive. But All Might explains that the Class A alumni got together and pitched in their collective funds to fund it, with Bakugo spearheading the initiative. So clearly Deku's friends haven't forgotten him, and they've been working behind the scenes to allow him to become a hero again all this time. All Might says, "The secret's out, your body still moves on its own, right?" meaning Deku still has the instinct to become a hero and to help people, just like he did moments earlier when he dove to catch that little kid who was about to fall. All Might says, "Take this to heart, kid. This too is a power you've earned, fair and square." And as Deku smiles with tears in his eyes, he takes possession of the battle suit. The next thing we see is Bakugo holding out his hand and saying, "Let's go, Deku." We see Hawks wondering if heroes have more time to kill than before, as someone reports a landslide at Star War Highway that is impeding traffic and needs heroes to clear it. Yes, Horikoshi finally did it. After so many poorly disguised Star Wars references, he decided to just include the full word Star War in his manga. He just couldn't help himself, and it's the final chapter, so he was probably like, okay, screw it. Deku sees like the ghost or vestige of Shigaraki looking at him, reminding him of everything that's happened, and then in the very next panel, and the last panel of the entire manga, we see all the Class A alumni, including Shinso, as adults. They are all together again in their hero costumes. Deku is wearing that new advanced battle suit, and they are all ready to be heroes together. Oh man, this is epic. They all look a bit older, and there are definitely some differences we can spot, like Shinso seeming to have a new hero costume, Mina and Choji having longer hair, Bakugo with 2 Viking braids in the back like that foreshadowing we got a while back, and Mineta with apparently some stubble on his chin. But other than that, they all look pretty similar to what they did before, especially Toru. The narration ends, this time for real, with the words, "This is the story of how all of us will keep reaching out our hands forever." Honestly, this hit me right in the feels, and it is truly a powerful moment. How great to see them all being heroes together again after all this time. I mean, Deku had already made his peace with being a teacher and not being able to be a hero, even though he did miss the hero life and his friends. He felt lonely at times, and he was content with the fact that he could now inspire and guide other people and make their dreams come true. But then at the end of the chapter, thanks to All Might and his friends, he actually gets another chance to keep living his own dream thanks to the new battlesuit. We all remember how strong All Might's Iron Might battlesuit was. It basically allowed him to use powers that mimicked the quirks of all the Class A students, which was kind of insane. So if Deku now has that kind of power, or even more power because technology has advanced even further in the last 8 years, then Deku really does have the chance to become one of the top pro heroes despite being quirkless. So there it is, after 10 years and 430 chapters, the end of MHA. This was a classic happy shonen ending that gave us a very optimistic view of society, with people working together to reach common ground and correct the mistakes of the past. This kind of result is obviously hard to reach in the real world, but it's good to see so much progress being made in the world of MHA. It's also good to see people learning from their mistakes in the past, making things better for the heteromorphs and for everyone in general, and it's great to see that villain activity is decreasing as both heroes and regular citizens do their part to keep everyone safe. This chapter showed us that technology is playing a more and more central role in the series, and being a hero isn't necessarily everyone's dream anymore, because technology has advanced so far and the tech industry is booming, so many are looking forward to working as inventors and programmers and stuff like that. Now, of course, this raises another danger, which is that the population will rely too much on technology, just like they once relied too much on heroes. But that's a question for the Cyberpunk sequel to MHA. As far as ships go, it seems that Horikoshi knew how insane the shipping fanbase was, and he decided to just not confirm any ship and let everyone decide on their own. He strongly hinted with the images we've seen that Ochako and Deku either are dating or dated at one point in the past, but there's nothing official, so people can still speculate and imagine and have fun all they want. I do wish personally that at least Izuocha had been confirmed after all the build-up, but no dice. Needless to say, I also wish that we got at least a single panel of Deku's freaking father, but in the end, absolutely nothing. Even though Hori himself said in an interview years ago that he would introduce Deku's dad before the end of the series, we got nothing. Maybe we'll get another movie where we finally get Deku's dad and Izuocha, and if we do, yes, I will pay money to see it, so I guess in that sense, Horikoshi would win again, but we'll have to wait and see. In the end, I do think that this is a really good, happy ending for the story. It did make me emotional after reading this series for so long and making videos about it for like 7 years here on the channel. I do feel like the ending was rushed and there were some major unresolved plot points, so I wouldn't call it the perfect ending, but it was still strong and it made a lot of sense in a lot of ways. What did you guys think about the ending? Let me know down in the comments. We gotta get a good conversation going. There is just so much to say about this 8-year time skip that I'm gonna have to be posting a new MHA video soon, breaking down the new generation of heroes and all the new pro hero rankings, along with how strong I think Deku is going to be now that he has a new battle suit. So don't forget to subscribe right now so you don't miss that video. It is coming soon. Oh, there was something else that I had in my notes that I forgot to say. Let's see. Definitely do not mention that 25-year-old Ochako looks thick AF. Oh, anyway, if you want to know who I think are the strongest multiple quirk users in the final arc of the series, check out my video on the top 13 strongest quirk gods in MHA, link on screen and in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys.